In case you didn't notice by Richie's accent, you were born in a small island off the coast of England.
A small island off the coast. No, a small island even off the coast of America. Off America's east coast. Yeah, Ireland, yeah. So, place called Waterford, yeah. Ireland's oldest city. Right. And a beautiful place, Port Lorga. And would you believe, it's amazing you bringing up Waterford. Our hurlers, we play a sport called hurling. You've seen hurling. We've made it to the All-Ireland hurling final this year, which will take place in Croke Park on Sunday. Oh. It's a summer sport, but of course with COVID and all that garbage. So I would imagine the atmosphere in the city is quite excited. We last got to the final a couple of years ago. We haven't won it since the 1950s. A lot of excitement. Great city. But I've not been home for a long time. I spent a lot of time on the road. Spain, Manchester, then Spain, then Manchester again, then Salford. So, yeah, I'm from Waterford.
Bit in London.
Little bit in London, which is where we met.
Yes.
At TPV. So I've been around the houses a bit. In Salford now, which is great. Love it in Salford.
So what got you into, because I know you've done commercial radio before you went into
the
esoteric areas. What was it that got you into radio? What made
accident,
you want to do
really. It was an accident, really. I was nightclub DJing. And that was probably the last thing that I was any good at, probably. I'm not being modest now, I'm telling the truth. And the local radio station came to me in the form of the manager and gave me a massive ego. He said, would you like to come and be a DJ on the radio? Now, WLR-FM is one of Ireland's most successful commercial radio stations. It always has been. It's a hugely successful station. So to be invited to be on it, sure, I thought I was the bee's knees. I was the daddy, right? And talk about deflation of ego, Hayden, because I quickly realised that I was cheaper than a Securicor security guard. What they did was they said, do the 2 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock in the morning stint. You be on between 2 and 7. And we'll give you a playlist. And you entertain whatever, I don't know, insomniac listeners you have at that hour of the morning. I was still happy to do it, but I realised that they didn't really have any ambition for me, really. But I decided, well, I've got some ambition. I'm going to do some things on graveyard radio that are going to get me noticed, which is what I did. Yeah. And graduated then to prime time and ultimately graduated to producing the talk, the 2-hour primetime talk show in the morning, 10 to 12, the usual, the politics show. Yeah. And that's really where it all began for me then, yeah.
That's where the bug really got hold of you.
I loved it. I loved the fact that you had to fill 5 2-hour radio shows a week with a mix of politics, local and national, and entertainment, and also try and get listeners on, having their say as well, and being totally responsible for that. I realised very early on what a powerful thing that is, and that you have to respect that, because ultimately you get to decide what people hear.
Yes.
And as you well know, you make the decisions of what not to cover.
Yes.
We never think about that, do we?
No.
What have I omitted?
Yeah, why isn't that in there?
Yeah.
I mean, most time, in truth, the truth is you omit things because you think,
yeah, that's right.
Boring.
Yeah. And you're asking yourself the question, you say to yourself, well, I've got political opinions. Am I leaning towards, in terms of the guests I bring on and the things I cover? And you find out that you are.
Yes, yeah, you're as fallible as everybody else.
Of course you are.
I mean, I've not done a ton of radio. In fact, the first radio show I did was at Fab.
That's right.
That Paul Ripley runs. Another big plug, go and watch the Mancunian candidates on YouTube. And he said, do you want to do a radio show? I was like, yeah, all right. So he said, don't worry, I'll train you up on the desk. Invited me in.
Yeah, great guy, Paul.
He went, that's that. Right, off you go, fella. I remember the big old desk that you saw at Fab.
They had the proper desk.
Yeah, the
proper desk.
With the needles going
32
like
channels, yeah.
Oh, but it was beautiful. But I quickly discovered that as much as I enjoy, and I love doing the trigger warning stuff, the videos, interviews, everything like that, there is something special about radio.
Yeah.
Online radio, whatever, it doesn't matter. When it's dimly lit room and it's you and the mic and you're talking, you're always up on top of it when you're doing the radio, so it's really close, and you're talking in your mind to one person.
Well, you are. It's an intimate medium.
It's beautiful.
We don't listen to the radio in groups. We listen on our own, don't we?
Yes.
And a million studies have shown, I know studies, people say you can get a study to prove anything, but I think we know that people absorb more information when they're listening to the radio, as opposed to, I don't care how good the podcast is. I mean, you've got all bells and whistles here. I watch this every Thursday, the recent ones with Emma Kenny and Count Dankla. It is fantastic and it's compelling stuff, no doubt about it. But you are still going to absorb more of what's being said if it's radio. So there's still a
most
radio
successful
plays
advertising radio.
That's right, 100%.
And it's still, whereas television has been problematic, radio is still.
Yeah.
Because you listen, you pay attention. Even if you're driving your car, it's no more distracting than having someone next to you.
That's right.
So the radio is your passenger. But there is something magical about doing it. I can see just from the limited amount that I've done that it's, I get it. You know, when you're on that and you're talking about something you enjoy, I've not had to do anything I'm not fussed about because it's not a career, it's something I just enjoy. There is something absolutely magical about when you sit down. If you've got notes, brilliant. If you haven't, well, you're just going to have to fill.
We'll have to fill, yeah.
And when that goes live, it's a wonderful thing, and I get it. So when I met you, it was about 7-8 years ago.
2014, I think it was.
2014, I think.
No, it wasn't.
No,
it was
before that,
2013.
Yeah.
Early or late 2012, early 2013, around about
So
that
how
time.
did you, because you, at that time, you'd gone over to Spain to run a pub, you'd left all the radio stuff behind.
Yeah.
How did you come to suddenly end up at a TV station David Icke was trying to launch?
Well, I ended up doing radio in Spain. I went to work for a company called Talk Radio Europe. They'd fired a guy. Well, they'd fired the guy who opened it because he'd been having sex with a 16-year-old girl. He'd run some talent competitions. That was a bit of a scandal. They'd fired him, and the evening guy went to do that gig, and they reached out to me and asked me would I do the evening gig, and I said, yeah, I'll do the evening gig so long as. At this stage, I was getting into reading people like David and Jim Mars's books. So I was very interested in this, and I decided, yeah, I'll do it so long as I can go down that road. They had no problem with that. So I did, and that was an interesting time. You're again, it's a radio station in Marbella. It's got all the bells and whistles. It's got a very sexy and grandiose name, Talk Radio Europe. It really broadcasts to the Costa Blanca and the Costa del Sol. Outside of that, it doesn't have many listeners. Yeah. But I knew that I would get a big online following because I knew that there would be people in the US and in the UK who were listening to Alex, and they were starved of other radio shows like Alex's and Jeff Rents, for example. They were doing huge numbers in America. So I just started talking to, again, people like David, and I really enjoyed that. And that's where it really began. The oft-mentioned Caroline, the bar business became very difficult in Spain then. This is after what I would say, the manufactured 2008 financial crash made it very difficult for everybody. She went back to working in accounting in Gibraltar. She's an accountant by trade. And I went back to radio after a short gap from it. And it was at that time that David Icke and his former business partner decided they would try and do a 24-hour-a-day TV channel with alternative information. And because I'd gotten to know him, he'd asked me, would I get involved? In fact, maybe there are people who don't know this. It was never meant to be television at the beginning. And this is the fatal flaw in the TPV, what led to its downfall. It was meant to be radio. It was meant to be build a couple of radio studios, use guys like me to help kind of train people up, and somehow, somewhere, I think it was in Camden Town. One weekend I'd flown in from Spain. It turned into TV, and I never liked that from the beginning, but I kept my mouth shut. I said once, listen, radio's going to be very cheap and very cost effective. It's not going to cost you very much money at all, but they were hell bent on going large very early. Yes. They'd raised about 450,000, maybe £500,000, but within a few months that money was gone.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, obviously there's been scandals,
yeah.
But I can safely say, as an outsider with no skin in the game, you know, I'm not a friend of Davies, I'm certainly not a friend of Sean Adult.
Yeah.
quite the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, I came down, I met you there.
You came to see us, yeah.
I had a chat with David for a bit and we hung out, and the operation was set up and how it was set up. When I was invited into that meeting with Sean and everything else, and they were talking about the things they were doing, I remember when we came out and I said to you, how are they funding
They weren't really.
Because I know about online streaming and what it costs. And when I tried to tell Sean, he just blanked me.
It's costing a fortune,
Yeah, and someone said, how are you funding that? And I remember I quite openly said, I think it's going to struggle. This is going to be hard. Be really hard. And of course, it happened. And the accusations and everything, as if you and David suddenly split.
Off what happened was there was a woman working there, a woman called Sonia Poulton, about the worst human being that I've ever encountered in my life. Dreadful in every sense of the word. Nobody would work with Poulton. Nobody would work with her. She's dreadful. 4 or 5 producers came and went, fell out with everybody, and in the end, she was kind of she was encouraged to kind of just go away, basically. And she did, and started making some unfounded allegations about money, people spending money that they shouldn't have been spending. And, I have less time for Sean Adel than you do. But what they did there, and the reason that went tits up, was because they were trying to run the best part of 15 in-house productions.
It was bad choices.
Hiring directors in, as you said, hiring producers in. These people were asking for £4,000, £5,000, £6,000 a month. There was no advertising because they didn't have any advertising. And in the end, that money disappeared very quickly. And they ran another telethon, which didn't do well because obviously the people who contributed early on went, well, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
It's obviously not working. So it kind of went the way it was inevitably going to go.
It was a grand endeavour.
It was a disaster. It was a grandiose idea. David Icke has no questions to answer whatsoever. It was all above board.
I saw the gear down there. I know where the money went.
It was madness.
I saw it.
It was madness. And they kept adding shows. And I kept seeing men walking around the offices and women. Who are you? Oh, I'm some BBC. Because they were getting BBC and ITV producers who are on jollies, basically. Yeah. And it ran out of money very quickly. And I ended up then basically submitting my show reel to radio stations around the world. And I had 2 offers in the end. One was from a radio station in, where was it? It was somewhere in the Middle East. It had to be Dubai, I think. Said to me, the English station in Dubai, Channel 4 in Dubai. Yeah. Said, come and work for us. And I said, no problems. Except you and Caroline can't live together unless you get married. That's what they said. And they said, you can only drink in designated places. So I said, I can't live with this fucking French bombshell that I live with. She's gorgeous, by the way. Bragging.
And obviously a saint.
And I can't have a drink. And a saint. Yeah, a saint to put up with me.
Yeah.
And they said, well, you can have a drink, but you've got to get a license for it. And all that garbage. All this dystopian stuff. Now I think, when you think about what's going on now, it's mild what was going on in Dubai. So I turned them down. And then I never mentioned the radio station in the north of the country that offered me a job. And the reason I don't mention who they are is because I might do business with them again in the future.
You don't want to shit your chips.
No, it's a huge station. And they came to me and they offered me the breakfast show. They offered me a substantial amount of money to present it, to co-present it with a girl that I met. And she was lovely. And we would have bounced off one another. She was fabulous. And my missus and Ike said, you'll either leave that in a huff or you'll be fired.
Yeah.
Because you can't be talking about the X Factor and traffic updates and stuff like that. You'll lose your fucking mind doing that.
Yeah, of course.
And I said I would. So I thanked them and said, no, thanks. They said, look, we might do some business in the future. And that's how the Richie Allen radio show came about, as you well know, because at that stage, I didn't have a pot to piss in, but had enough to buy a mixing desk and some microphones. Yeah. You advised on the gear. You and Ripley.
I remember the call, yeah.
That's right. And before I knew it, I was sitting in front of a big iMac with a mixing desk and a boom mic. That's all I could afford was a boom mic, a Rode boom mic. And I went live one September evening at 8 o'clock, as it was at the time, cacking it really. Not nervous about being on air, even though I still, to this day, I'm still a bit nervous every time I go on air, but cacking it that you've just turned down 50 grand a year to do a breakfast show. You can barely make your rent in Fallowfield. You're fucked, son. And then the theme song was coming on.
Yeah. Always a good way to start a show.
And you've got to smile.
Yeah.
On the radio, you've got to smile.
Yeah.
You got to smile. And I'm getting text messages from David, really encouraging ones going, well done, son. It'll be all right in the end. And I'm like, you fucking bastard. I've not got this month's gas money. I don't mean for our American listeners or viewers. I mean, of course, British gas money. So that's where it began. And 6 years later, it's still there, which is lovely. And I feel awkward talking about it. Yeah, it's flying, yeah.
But you see, this is the thing, though. I wanted to talk about it and how you got there, because I don't think a lot of people know or have heard the passion you talk about these things.
No.
It's easy for me. I speak to you on the phone every week or other week. I know you, but I think a lot of people, they love the show. They might not know.
No, I'm very private.
Yeah, exactly.
Very private.
I mean, don't worry, I won't go digging into
well, you can ask what you want. You've been given. You can say whatever you want.
Carte blanche, I have, and the best thing to do when you're given that is not take the piss anyway. But I think it's cool that people know how you got there.